This one is on your culture being defined by the worst behaviors you tolerate. And it's kind of a provocative title. So let's get into it. First of all, here's a quote from Andy Grove, who's the former CEO of Intel. He talks about how a corporation is a living organism and it has to shed its skin and everything has to change. And the sum of all those changes to values and focus and methods is transformation, which is absolutely right. But the times we live in, man, they are so full of change. It is hard to just keep up, let alone be strategic and intentional. It feels like it's hard just to tread water. So these are just a few of the headlines that have popped up in the last couple of weeks around AI and all the changes that it's bringing about. So if you're feeling pressure, if you're feeling like it's tough to keep up, if you're feeling like you have to ask for change, even though your people are really tired and kind of fed up, then I hear you. This is the webinar for you. And really, it's going to focus on this particular question. How can we make culture change as painless and efficient as possible? When everybody's tired and everybody's reeling from all the changes all over the place, political, economic, socio-economic, geopolitical, technological, AI-driven, you name it, it feels like we're living in an age of deep unrest and change. So how do we do this so that it's efficient and painless? Okay, so this is really a 3-for-1 presentation. So defining what you stop tolerating as per the title is one of 3 things you can do. And even though that's the one I'm going to focus on the most because it's one that people overlook, I'm actually going to do a 3-for-1. So we're going to talk about 3 levers of change. The first one's inspiration, which is how do you get people to adopt new behaviors that you should start seeing. The second one is inhibition, or the stuff you're going to stop tolerating. Like, how can we get people to stop the old behaviors? And then preservation, like, how do we make sure we don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, inadvertently stepping on some part of our culture or our traditions or our legacy or our mindset that actually is a really beautiful part of us and that we want to preserve. Okay, so getting right into it. The first problem with any one of these levers is that leadership tends to talk in a way that's really kind of bland and vague and doesn't speak specifically to an urgent and precise change that people need to do. So on the inspiration side, you hear these lovely sentences like, to thrive in an ever-changing world, we must embrace change, dare to innovate, learn from challenges, and empower our people, which is totally fabulous. And it's not wrong. It's just that when I read that, I don't actually know what I, as an employee in that organization, is supposed to do next. Like, I don't know if I'm doing that right now, doing this webinar. If this was my company, right? I don't know if I'm embracing change and daring to innovate. I think I'm doing something valuable, but it's hard to know precisely what's required there. And the same with things like inhibition. No more internal silos. We hear that all the time. We're not going to tolerate, selling products and features. We want to sell something different, a story, a vision, an experience, or whatever, right? Or preservation. We have a long tradition of being customer oriented. We're going to continue to do that. It sounds kind of comforting, but I don't really know how to tie these big statements to what I do every day. They lack urgency. They lack precision. In fact, I would say that there is a big version of inspiration, inhibition, and preservation, and there's a small version of inspiration, inhibition, and preservation. So the big one is department-wide. On inspiration, it's like the big strategic message, like the one I just read to you from the previous slide. In inhibition, the big department-wide lever is like, the employee code of conduct or the big policy document on what we're going to do. In preservation, it's, the annual traditions or something that comes around once a year or whatever, right? But there's another lever. And the second lever is the small day-to-day stuff that you're doing in these 3 yellow bubbles: inspiration, inhibition, and preservation. And I'm going to make the case for you that inspiration in the day-to-day, if you're inspiring people to do something new and different and bold and innovative or whatever, you're really asking for people to transgress, to violate the rules that apply to the current culture. And that's a big ask. It's not all about happy inspiration. It can feel kind of scary. In inhibition, we're talking about those daily limits, the things that you symbolize and that you signal you're going to stop tolerating in this new culture, in the day-to-day, in the meetings, in the town halls, in the all hands meetings. What are the things you're going to stop tolerating? Where are you putting the limits, the boundaries? And then in preservation, it's the daily rituals that you can count on, that like a team or a group of people does every day in order to reinforce sort of repetition and stability, and also to assert the identity of the group. This is what we do here. This is how we celebrate, or this is how we recognize people, or this is how we start a meeting, or this is how we stop the meeting. So I want to get into each one of these, but I specifically want to say we focus too much on the top layer and not enough on the bottom layer. So a lot of what I'm going to focus on is on this bottom layer to help you understand, what does this actually look like in the day-to-day, not just the big department-wide messages and policy documents and annual traditions, but the day-to-day stuff that knits together our culture. Because in the end, your culture is the stuff you do every day. It's not the stuff you say. It's not the stuff in your messages. It's not the stuff in the HR poster on your Gartner, on your corporate office wall. It is actually the stuff you do every day. So we're going to talk about that. Okay. So if we start with the one that is related most to the title of this presentation, right? Inhibition. What are we going to stop tolerating? What are the daily limits that we are going to assert? The first thing I want to say is this is really, really critical, because what you tolerate in the day-to-day culture, it actually defines your culture. It's not a proxy for it. It's not a kind of stand-in. It is the culture. And it comes in two forms. There's a lot of words on this slide. So let me talk about the left-hand side column is signals about what you're going to tolerate in the workplace in terms of what I would consider to be like good and bad neighborly conduct. The right-hand side is to show you that you can decide to stop tolerating things that have to do with the particular transformation or change you're trying to bring about, that aren't just about good neighborly conduct or good workplace conduct. Both are important. So on the left-hand side, the examples of like what kind of culture we want to create for the workplace, just in terms of how we treat each other, might be, we don't tolerate lateness, or we don't tolerate interruptions, or we don't tolerate people only talking about problems and never bringing forth solutions, or we don't tolerate people taking credit for other people's ideas or work, right? Those are like good neighborly conduct, workplace conduct, and they're really important, especially in order to create psychological safety, like a place where I know I'm going to get recognized for the work I do, and where we're going to demand excellence, or we're not going to tolerate, speaking over the junior people, or whatever it is, okay? But there's also signals that you can send about what you're going to stop tolerating related to the transformation you're trying to do. So if you said, hey, we need everybody to be more empowered, more bold decision makers, we need to be faster, more efficient, more hungry, or whatever, then you might just say, not you don't have to ask for approval, but actually you're not allowed. It's a totally different message to say you are not allowed to ask for approval for this area, this thing we're doing, than it is to say, don't worry, you don't have to ask, I've got your back, right? Because the second category, don't worry, I've got your back, it doesn't really incite change. People go, oh no, Mary said I don't really need to ask for approval, but just in case, I'm just going to send her an email, right? This is, you're not allowed. And this comes from an actual executive that I spoke to who was in a travel company and was trying to get people to collaborate and innovate across the different silos of his organization. And so he had a few rules, right? One, you've got to work with someone outside your team on the new idea you're working on. Two, you've got to share the information about your new idea as you're working on it. So not when it's perfect, but warts and all, as you're working on it, put in a public place so people can see it. And three, you are not allowed to come to me for approval. I trust your judgment. I know that if you're working on the idea, it's probably important for us. So go forth. You're not allowed to ask for approval for the idea, right? That's a totally different signal that hardens and kind of defines the edges of the culture, the boundaries, much more effectively than, hey, try this new thing. And you can see other ideas on here, right? We don't tolerate aimless meetings. We don't tolerate over planning, just start. These are ways of strengthening the message so that people understand this isn't just a nice to have. It really defines the boundaries of what we will accept. Okay, so typical things that you want to take a look at when you are thinking about tolerance and what change levers you have. So first of all, there's transformation barriers and there's toxic barriers. The transformation barriers are just systemic things that aren't really anybody's fault, They're just areas where you might typically want to stop tolerating things because it's just the way we've always done things. So, we don't have training, we can't do the new thing, or whatever you're asking for sounds really good. I agree, but it's not that urgent, or I'm not really sure who's really responsible for it, or there's super heavy bureaucracy, so getting everything done is really hard. So you couldn't point to say, hey, Mary, that's your fault, or that's your thing to change. It's just sort of a systemic barrier that you want to overturn, right? The toxic barriers are the ones that are much more personal, right? The ones that inhibit psychological safety. So they make people less productive, less engaged, less likely to share a new idea, less likely to change, less likely to take a risk, and all those things. So that could be, these are not by any means complete, but just as examples, it might be things like, there's no real accountability. So you're not called to account if you don't do what's asked. Or there's a lot of micromanagement. So I'm not going to empower you and enable you. I'm just going to tell you what needs doing, and I'm going to make sure that you do it, and I'm going to look over your shoulder every 2 seconds. Or, we don't listen to the junior voices. We just talk over them, and we're very, we're very condescending, like, listen, little grasshopper, I've been here 20 years. You don't really understand what it takes, right? So I'm not listening to your ideas. So both areas are just examples of places you might want to think about stopping tolerating some kind of behavior, because they're both useful and important. Okay. So here's a real world case study of a financial organization called 10 Value. That's not what they're really called. This is a pseudonym. And their really big insight was that they had legacy behaviors on the part of employees that actually were more like a behavioral loop. So the employee had a behavior they didn't want, but that was looped together with a leadership behavior that was leading to that employee behavior. So the leadership was saying, I'm going to tell you what to do. I'm going to tell you what to do. And of course, that led to employees just asking and always seeking approval and consensus, right? So you can't change one. You can't just change the employee behavior without changing the other. So they got together and they created these legacy behavior loops, like what was really happening, and then these desired behavior loops where both the employee and the leader behavior had to change. So if you wanted the employee to feel more empowered and not take so long looking for approval and use their own judgment, then you would look and say, well, is the leader listening and questioning as they lead, or are they just telling, right? And so what you would say is, there's an employee behavior that we're going to stop tolerating, which is always asking for approval and seeking consensus and whatever, but there's a leadership behavior that we're also going to stop tolerating, which is just telling people what to do as if they're automatons with no personal judgment and no ability to think and make up their own mind. So you can see, you would go from the leadership behavior to the employee behavior in this positive desired loop. So what I'm saying here is you don't want to look at only the employee behavior. You want to look at the leadership behavior and see if there's a loop you need to change in both, and say, we're going to stop tolerating both of these sides in order to get the outcome we want. Okay, so one thing to say here is, if you're not someone who has done this a lot, like called people out on what you won't tolerate, it can feel kind of scary at the beginning. And like with any behavior that feels kind of scary at the beginning, whether it's telling people you're not going to tolerate something, or raising your hand and speaking in public in a big meeting, or trying out a new idea that you're not sure is going to work, or whatever the new behavior is, like with any new behavior, you should treat it like exercise. Practice it. You need to practice how and when you're going to intervene so that you de-risk it before you try it. Okay. The key takeaway here is, leadership is not just about inspiration and exhorting people to do all the amazing things and all the amazing paths. That's a big part of it. You got to get people to buy into your mission. But it's also, real culture change is about clearly and actively and thoughtfully inhibiting the old behaviors, being very clear about, we're not going to do that anymore. We're not going to tolerate that. Whether it's something like being late for meetings, or something like how you treat someone else, or something like asking for approvals, right? Be thoughtful about those areas that have the biggest signaling power, where you could signal as a leader, we're not doing it this way anymore. And that signaling power is really powerful, especially in the day-to-day. It sends a really, really clear message that only like inspiring and messages that are sort of positive cannot. Okay, that being said, I do want to talk about inspiration, because one of the things that I've observed is that What sounds to leaders like a bunch of desirable attributes that we're all trying to work towards, we want to be empowered and bold and innovative and fast and high quality and whatever. It all sounds great. But in the day to day, a lot of times that inspiration is actually transgression. What you're actually asking people to do is violate the set of norms and implicit rules that they use to navigate the culture every day. We don't speak up in this meeting, and we never speak truth to power, or we don't ask too many questions, or whatever, or we don't get associated with ideas that might not work, right? You're asking people to transgress. And that's a really different feeling than, oh, we're so inspiring and it's so fabulous. It often doesn't feel that fabulous to try and do the new thing that leadership is asking for. Okay, so as I say, it can feel like a violation of the rules, and a violation of the rules when you're trying something new feels really scary. So what do you do about that? Well, take a look at some of the examples, right? A lot of examples I see around inspirational messages are, we're going to stop with a hierarchy and we're going to start with a more flat organization. We're going to stop with asking for approval all the time, and we're going to start with bold decision making. We're going to stop being risk averse and we're going to be innovative. We're going to stop waiting until it's perfect, and we're just going to start just by starting and by giving it a try. No one would look at the yellow column and go, those are really bad ideas. In general, everyone would go, yeah, that sounds great. And then they'd say, but you first, Mary. I'll go after you, but I'm not going first. I don't want to be a bold decision maker and make the wrong move. I don't want to be innovative and do something that might fail. I don't know if that's going to work. We come from a culture where that wouldn't work. So it's really transgressive and very scary to do a lot of what seemingly appears positive and inspirational. Okay, so this is an example of a case study of İşbank, a Turkish bank. And what they were trying to do is change the mindsets of their people and then change the daily behaviors, right? So starting with mindsets in 3 areas, right? Can we have an outcome orientation? So we're not just worried about our own little step and procedure. We're trying to get to the business outcome. Can we have end-to-end ownership? So again, not just my little patch, but the whole view. And can we have really clear accountability? Like, I take ownership and responsibility for this thing, right? And what they did is co-create this sort of manifesto in their fusion teams, together with their people, to come up with the desired behaviors in each of those mindset areas. And what I really love about this example is that they sort of followed the Agile manifesto, if you've ever seen it, right? Where it's this thing over that thing. This thing is more important than that thing. So it's like anchoring in. We're coming from a place where everyone's just doing their to-dos, but actually I want you to get away from your busyness and your to-dos and get into business values. Is the most important thing I could be doing every day to create business value, right? Instead of just waiting for the perfect moment and waiting for the perfect time and waiting for the right time, how about we just take initiative right now? Instead of waiting to be perfect, can we just start? Those kinds of things. Instead of a bunch of rules that people just procedurally follow, how about self-control, right? Self-judgment, self-control. So it's really clear, not just the inspirational place you're trying to go to, but the thing you're going to break. The second half of each one of those behavioral questions is the thing you're going to stop doing. So it's really clear the kind of commitment to this is what we're stopping tolerating, and this is the inspirational thing we're going to go to. We're going to go to business value, we're going to go to outcomes orientation, we're going to go to self-control, we're going to go to data over opinions or whatever. Okay. So to get into some of the neuroscience, okay, when you do the inspiring thing, it often feels unsafe. So this artwork, I added this in the slide because it's supposed to be kind of transgressive art. There's this great quote that says, all art was once contemporary. That is, even when Caravaggio was back doing chiaroscuro centuries ago, at the time, it was really rule bending and really different, right? So all art has been contemporary. And with that in mind, when someone feels unsafe, right? When someone feels like they have been asked to do a transgression, it feels like they're outside the group. It feels like they are going to be ostracized. Like, if I do this thing, it's going to be dangerous, right? That is a really bad place for a human to be, because it wakes up a 10,000-year-old part of your brain that knows that being outside the group means death. It means you don't have a mate, you don't have protection, and you don't have food. because back then there's no way you would have survived. And so the pressure to belong is real, and asking someone to do something different means they might not belong. And that can be really, really anxiety inducing. It's also when you're asking someone to transgress or inspiring them to do something new, you can be threatening their position in the group, right? They're a master, they have reputation, they have a kind of standing in the group and a hierarchy that they're in, and you're going, try something you've never done before. And they're going, absolutely not, because everyone will know I don't know how to do it. This is happening with AI right now, where people are going, I don't want to try something new with AI when I'm not really masterful at these skills. And 2024 was the year to figure out how to do this stuff. I don't know yet. I don't want to tell anyone because I'll be ashamed at not knowing. And so it can feel really, really exposing and shaming to not be masterful at something because it's new. Also, doing something you can't reverse. Like if I do something, and I sign my life away or the next 9 months of my life, which is the same thing, what if it's terrible? And what if I can't reverse it? I don't want to be part of that. I want to see what happens first, right? Or of course, feeling shame that you tried something new, that it failed, that whatever. Okay, so I'm trying to say it's really difficult to ask people to do something new. Even when you think it's really desirable, it can feel like this in their brain. In other words, you're fighting biology. So what I'm really saying is that it is absolutely the leader's job to make it safe. If you're the one asking people to do something new, it is absolutely your responsibility to make it feel as safe as possible to do that new thing. And here's just a bunch of techniques on how to do that, okay? One is make it smaller. Like make the ask really, really small. I just want you to participate, not innovation, just this 1 2-hour prototyping session. That's it, right? 2 hours of your life. Or make it reversible. Hey, if this doesn't work, this committee that we stood up, we will disband it in a month. It's just a try. We can back out of this decision. It's totally reversible. Or lower the commitment. This is what app vendors do, right? They go, first 14 days are free. Don't you worry. Share your credit card details, but we won't charge you, right? So I'm going to lower the commitment. There's no money down. There's no money up front, right? Just first 30 days, right? So lower the commitment. Use peer pressure, right? Send the signal that the old way is actually not part of the group, that it is less safe for people to stay where they are than it is for them to go to where you are, right? Not just safe to go to where you are. It is comparatively unsafe for them to stay where they are. Okay. You can Trojan horse it. This is what I try to do when I'm exercising in the morning, which is I don't really want to exercise in the morning. So I don't tell my brain, now we're going to exercise. I just start doing push-ups. Like I just roll out of bed, start doing push-ups or something, or start stretching. Something where there was never a moment of decision. I just Trojan horsed it. I just kind of inserted it by tricking the brain without saying, this is the new thing, right? Just started happening. And now we're already doing it, so you can't say you can't do it, right? Or reframing it. This isn't, if you're with a bunch of engineers, don't call it innovation, don't call it something new. Just say we have to solve this problem. And it happens to be a problem we have to solve in a new way that we've never done before, but we're just problem solving. All these are ways to help make it safe for someone to transgress, which is the same thing as getting them to do the new thing and being inspired. So that is your job if you're the one selling the newness. Okay, so the key issue is that doing the small inspirational thing every day can feel like a transgression. It can feel like a violation of the rules, and your whole job is to get it to be safe enough for someone to try. Make it smaller, make it reversible, Trojan horse it, reframe it, and all the other tactics. Okay, so the last thing is preservation. I would just say this. In these times of tumultuous change and massive technological evolution, preservation is kind of a thing. Making sure that you're preserving those aspects of your culture that really do lend strength and identity to who you are as a group, as a team, as a department, as an enterprise, or whatever, has never been more important than now. And I think in the day-to-day, this takes the form of daily rituals. Okay, so here's a bunch of examples of rituals you can use, but essentially they're all designed to do the same thing, which is, number one, afford some level of continuity. When everything is changing all the time and all this stuff is happening, can we just do one thing in our team meeting, in our town halls, in our one-on-ones, how I email people, whatever? Can we do one thing that is the same, that we can count on. Every Monday at 9 a.m., we're going to do this ritual. Everyone's going to talk about what they did this weekend or what they see outside their window or the last photo they took on their iPhone or whatever. It provides continuity, which provides stability and comfort to people as they're going through all the change. And the second thing that rituals do is that they give people an identity. So I remember this ritual that as a global CIO did. They were all co-located in an office. Okay. And what she did was every time they moved to a new system, they took a physical piece of the old system, walked outside, dug a hole, buried the piece of the old system, and then went in and had tea and cake. This was in the UK, so they had tea and cake. Okay. So like imagine you're a new person on the team and you happen to arrive, your first day is the day that everybody's going to go and, do their ritual where they're moving to the new system. They take a piece of the old system, they walk outside, they dig a hole. Like just imagine you'd be going, what are we doing? Like we're digging a hole? Like what is happening? Right? And everyone around you would go, this is what we do. This is how we celebrate. This is how we mark the transition. This is how we say, that was yesterday. This is today, closing a chapter, new system, new rules, new whatever, right? That is the power of ritual. When the people in the team are like, this is what we do here. And as crazy as it might seem to you, this is what makes us us. It is a massive identity giver, which also matters a lot right now. Okay, so just some examples, right? You want to have an AI ritual, skill building, show and tell every Tuesday, or, we're going to show you what kind of culture we want to be by letting the junior people speak first. Or, I want to send a message to my people about birthdays or achievements or recognition. So everyone knows Mary's going to change her background every time we have a virtual meeting, or, an icebreaker ritual like the one you see on the slide, relationship building, whatever. The point is, rituals are really powerful at sending a signal of continuity and stability and comfort, and also massively powerful at giving people a clear identity about this is what we do when we're in this team or this department or whatever. Okay, so recommendations. There's a bunch of words on this slide. Let me just say, it is up to you to define and communicate clear boundaries. Your culture is more defined by the stuff you stop tolerating than it is by the stuff you inspire people to do. So be as thoughtful about what you will not accept as you are about the things you will. In that, don't just focus on the big messages. A lot of the times, in an effort to be comprehensive, the messages end up being generic and imprecise and they don't feel urgent. It's in the day-to-day that you're going to get the actual edges and boundaries of what you tolerate and what you don't to be felt viscerally by your people, right? Treat inspiration as transgression. It's not always transgression, but a lot of the times it really requires a ton of courage to go out and do something the culture has not traditionally asked you to do. And to go first is an amazingly courageous act. Most people are really risk averse. They like paying their mortgage. They like paying their kids piano lessons. This is the source of their ability to do that. So they're really risk averse. How are you going to make it safe for someone to violate the unwritten but very powerful accepted norms of how we do things around here every day? And then finally, preserve rituals, right? They give identity, they give comfort. Don't accidentally throw out some of that identity with all the change that you are making. Okay, so with that, I believe some questions have come up in the chat. Let me see what we have. Yes, we have a bunch of questions. I'm just going to go through and answer these, and then I'll bring Aditi back on stage. So let's see. Question number 1. I'm not that great at calling people out on bad behavior. Do you have any tips? So the answer is yes, I do. So as with any new behavior, this one can feel kind of scary, just laying down the law or saying, I don't want you to do that. Or how do you actually do this? Like, what is the art of the call out to say, hey, Mary, that's not how we do things around here or whatever. So when you're in front of a new behavior that feels kind of scary, it's always useful to practice 2 things. Number 1, try and practice the behavior in an area that doesn't matter. And number 2, widen your comfort zone. So like create a comfort challenge. A lot of people will talk about this comfort. This isn't a Gartner thing. This is a general thing, a comfort challenge. Okay. So let's imagine, I don't know who asked this question, but whoever asked this question, let's imagine that you're my life coach and you go, hey, Mary, you need to be more if you really want to stand up for your values and you really want to stand up for who you are, then you need to be more comfortable with discomfort. You need to be okay creating a bunch of social discomfort because that's how you fight for what you want, okay? And that life coach might say to me, because this is new and scary for you, I'm going to give you a comfort challenge. I want you to go and walk into a cafe and just lie on the ground. Just like lie on the ground. Go into a Costa coffee shop or a Starbucks or a Tim Hortons or whatever. Just lie on the ground, right? Hopefully it's not a rainy day and it's like a clean ground. Hopefully you're not wearing white. Okay, just lie on the ground for 30 seconds. Okay. Now this sounds like a totally strange thing, but actually, if you're not used to doing something uncomfortable, this is going to make your heart rate go up. It might make you sweat. You're going to have a physiological response going, I am breaking the norms of what is socially acceptable. But I'm not doing anything dangerous. I'm not hurting anybody. I'm just doing something that's deeply socially odd. So you make yourself do this. So you're training your body to go, see, I'm still here. Nothing happened, right? I had this deep physiological response. Nothing happened. So just, first of all, if you're not used to doing this and it's kind of scary, the art of the call out, then give yourself a comfort challenge where you test your physiological response, where you go, I'm still here. It's okay. My heartbeat went up. I did something that was socially odd for me and it's okay, right? People are going to come up to you and go, hey, you okay? You're going to go, yep, fine. Just have to stay here for another 25 seconds. Okay. And the other thing to do is practice the behavior in a place that doesn't matter. Like practice with your Uber driver, practice now that you're in a coffee shop, practice with your barista, right? Practice with whatever, so that you can practice in a place there's no risk. Like don't start your call out in a really high stakes environment. Don't negotiate your salary for the first time ever. Don't do your first time ever negotiation with your boss, right? Practice it somewhere. Don't do your first time interview, practice it somewhere. So practice in a low stakes environment first and use a comfort challenge to help you get physiologically comfortable with doing something that feels a little bit scary, okay? All right. Number 2, my people are fatigued from so much transformation, but I know more change is coming. Any tactics to help them stay motivated when everything is always changing? Yes. Okay. So first of all, that is a really great question because fatigue is a real thing. It is a psychological and physiological reality that goes beyond tiredness. Someone's fatigued when they wake up tired. Okay. There are particular things that are scientifically researched that you can do to fight fatigue. Okay. Here are a few really tactical things. Number 1, if you're asking for something really big, the big transformation, the big shift, the big move to the new system or process or whatever, what you need to do is break that into a series of small chunks that people can complete in a day or maximum a week. Why? Because people can't keep their motivation up with tons and tons of delayed gratification. I have to just keep on with the gray treadmill of slog. One day we will feel the reward. People will get fatigued and they'll just start checking out. The biggest fatigue fighter you have is progress and completion. I started the day with 9 things on my list. I crossed 5 off. I'm going, I'm good. I wrote the chapter of my book. I handed in my presentation. I planned for the meeting. I hired the person, whatever it is. Completion and progress are the things that fight fatigue the best. So make the steps small enough that someone could feel a sense of completion and progress in a day, maximum a week. So like if you're doing agile, a sprint is probably too long, right? For people who are actually fatigued. The other thing is, if you're in a cycle of fatigue, like you are like, I don't even know what day it is. Every day is the same. I just can't even get snap out of it. Do something for someone else. It sounds weird, but the giver, the person who's being generous, the person who does something for someone else gets more energy than the person who receives it. So, make someone breakfast, wash their car, buy them a coffee at the barista coffee shop that we seem to be spending a lot of time in with this Q&A, right? Do something for someone else that'll give you a lot of energy if you have to break a cycle of fatigue. And last but not least, say real things. If you're asking people to do something, don't use corporate speak. Corporate speak is fatigue inducing, not fatigue fighting. Say real things, be honest, use visceral, real language. Okay, that can help too. Third question, how should we be thinking about AI and its impact on culture? That is a big question. Okay, so I would just say, a few things. Okay, first of all, there's a lot of anxiety. AI is creating a ton of anxiety, and with good reason, because for the first time ever, revenue generation is decoupling from human headcount, and people know it, they smell it, they can see it. So it is causing a ton of anxiety and about the future and the uncertainty about the future and the speed with which AI is going and everything else. So one thing I would say is consider your organizational identity and the individual identities of your people, right? Is your organizational identity being threatened by AI? Like, is your mission or your core values or what you say you stand for coming under threat because of AI? You know, like humans are at the heart of everything we do. Well, are they? Right? And your individual identity, is people's individual identity coming under threat? Like if you're deploying AI and I'm in some part of the workforce and I've got this AI tool or this Gen AI assistant or whatever, and it's better than I am at doing task X, what's my new job? What am I supposed to do now? That is a threat to identity. I feel my identity has been devalued and degraded. There are particular things that people do when their identity is being devalued and degraded. The first thing is they ask for affirmation. They seek affirmation and feedback. Hey, am I important? Is this useful? Am I important? Is this useful? Right? The second is that they can engage in really dysfunctional behavior, like not get the memo, reject the change, disconnect, feel disenfranchised, undermine the change, right? So I would just look at this as a threat to identity. It's not just general anxiety. There's an organizational identity. Is AI threatening that? There's an individual identity. Is AI threatening that? Do those two overlap? And what is your answer to the new identity? What does that look like? How can you forge a new identity that is not degrading and devaluing for the people that you retain, right? Okay, so looks like we have one more question. What would you recommend for a risk-averse traditional culture that still needs to change? Yeah. So lots of established cultures and large organizations and mid-sized organizations have a legacy culture that is not like a startup. So the first thing is don't talk as if you were a startup. Don't go, hey, it's the age of AI. We're going to fail fast, fail forward, fail often, right? Like, no, you're not. No, you're not. Your people aren't going to do that because they have zero experience of that being a useful way to act in the organization that they're in the legacy culture that they're in, right? So what you're asking seems really alien and will be rejected, right? Okay, so what do you do when you still need people to change? You shrink the change, make it as small as possible to get people started on the journey. You know that quote, the first step of the journey is the hardest? It turns out that is actually biologically true. Like getting people to just start is very, very critical. So can you make it as easy as possible for people to take the first step? You can Trojan horse it. Like I didn't even tell you were taking the first step, but now we're already doing it. You didn't say you were going to innovate, but we already are. Isn't that great? Right? You can shrink the ask. You know, I just want 2 hours of your time. You can remove any friction between the user and the thing you want them to do. You know, any friction at all can be the difference between someone taking the first step or not. So let's say you wanted me to go running at 7 a.m. tomorrow morning. I don't want to run. I don't like running. I'm very comfortable in my bed. And I say to you, okay, you know what? You've convinced me. We're going running tomorrow morning, right? And it's 6:45 or 6:30. My alarm goes off. I just want to turn it off and go back to bed, right? So I try. I get out of bed and I'm like, you know what? I can't even find my running shoes. Forget this. I'm just going to send a message. I have a headache. I don't want to run, right? Because any friction, not being able to find my running shoes, that's the difference between me running and not running. But if you said, hey, Mary, night before, here's your shoes, here's your shorts, here's your shirt, you are ready to go. You roll out of bed, throw it on, get out the door. You're removing any obstacle, any non-systemic barrier between me and the thing you want me to do that increases the chances of someone trying. So in a traditional conservative culture, can you make it small? Can you make it easy? Can you make it fun? Can you remove the friction? All those levers can be used to get people to start.